All right. Hey, everybody. My name's William, and I'm here with my friends Grace Markwell, Nolan Cannon, and Nate Schaidt. And we're doing a kind of little follow-up from Sunday and the practice of Sabbath. And I'm super excited for you guys to hear from three of my friends and what this looked like for them. So we're going to kind of jump right in. I'm going to start with Nate, with you. Why don't you kind of share a little bit about Sabbath and how your family got into the practice and what it's looked like for you guys?
For our family, it's me, my wife, our three daughters, and Sabbath for us kind of came as a way of trying to figure out different, well, as we were talking about rhythms that Jesus would have encountered when he was walking the earth. And so we were trying to figure out, what does this Sabbath thing look like? Found a little plan. It's kind of like a...
When was this? When were you guys looking at it?
It's been a little over a year now.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a script. It was a book that I have that has different festivals and feasts and things like that the Jewish people would experience, Sabbath being one of them. And so we kind of printed it out, made it our own, and started walking through that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so you guys have three girls. How old are they?
12, 14, 9.
Okay. What's kind of been the struggles in that of just kind of starting, at 12, 14, and 9 of as a family starting that kind of rhythm?
Yeah, my wife and I remember this differently. My wife, Amanda, didn't think it took very long for us to kind of get into the feel of things. For me, it felt like an eternity. Just trying to sit down at the table and not get up from it was part of the problem. ADHD plays its toll in our family, and so that had its moment as well. But for the most part, getting the chance to sit down at the dinner table, which we've done, but interacting with the girls. So we have candles that we light, two candles that we light, bread that we pass, a cup. We use grape juice because, why not? And I know. Don't get me wrong. I have my glass of wine, but for the community, we share
there you go.
Glass of grape juice. But yeah, each person kind of has their own role to play.
Yeah.
And for young children to kind of show respect to the person whose turn it is to go, kind of a thing.
Yeah, sure.
Versus getting up and walking around and being antsy and things like that. But I thought it took a few months. My wife thinks it was a couple of weeks. That all of a sudden the girls were asking for it, like it's Sabbath tonight, correct? Kind of a thing. And when that happened, it just changed things. Everybody was on board. We now understand the process. We still have the script that we kind of follow.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's still fluid.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so while it was difficult at first, I had a friend of mine, his name was Rizzy, told me, just don't stop. Just don't stop. And so we didn't quit. We didn't give up, though I wanted to.
Yeah.
I'm a quitter. So I was willing to do that for the family and for my sanity. But as we kept going, it's now become something that our family looks forward to and we enjoy.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, we'll get in more into like that meal Friday. You guys do it Friday night?
Friday or Saturday.
Friday or Saturday. Okay.
Depends on what works.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We'll get a little more of the details of that, but that's awesome. So Nolan, what about for you, man? What was kind of your journey of starting this practice?
Yeah. So early 2023, I think I'm in not a bad place with God, but not a place where I feel like I'm particularly with him. I'm really good at talking to him, telling him what I need, asking him to change me, but not great at being around him. And so Lent is coming up, and I feel so out of touch with God that I don't feel like I can do the fast I would normally do during Lent, which is the lead-up period to Easter, for those who don't know. And I decided instead I was going to rest. I was going to try Sabbath. I was just going to see what that was about. So first Sunday of Lent rolls up. I'm committed to not doing anything. I wake up and I have a clenched jaw and I'm really stressed out because I didn't get near what I thought I was going to get done the previous week.
Yeah.
And it's not like I don't set unreasonable goals for myself. I set demanding goals, but not unreasonable ones, and I didn't get close. And then for 3 more weeks after that, the same thing. Didn't get close, really stressed out, locked jaw, go to church, worship, such as it was because I was stressed out.
Yeah.
Come home, and then I just relax into the day. And then the Sunday before Easter, I wake up, and it's just this beautiful peace where I'm just like, today is a day that I'm resting. And as I worshiped and as I was at home, and this is before we had Nate, so I was by myself. I don't think Kenzie was with us.
Yeah.
Was with me that day. I just got quietly from God over and over again. This is a gift. You cannot earn it, and you don't have to. It's mine, and I'm giving it to you. Yeah. And I haven't looked back. I've had a couple days where I've had to fight to Sabbath.
Sure.
But I haven't looked back. I've never wanted ever again to work 7 days a week because that sense that it's a gift, that sense that I get to rest has pervaded that my whole relationship with God.
Wow, that's awesome. That's super cool. All right, Grace, what about you? What's kind of been your journey?
Yeah, I started practicing Sabbath in January of 2020. And this kind of came about after the fall semester of my junior year. I was a junior in 2020 in college. And the fall semester, the end of 2019, I had been going through this discipleship group with Michelle and Adam Varan. It was 3 nights a week, super intense. It changed my life forever. Yeah. And we had been talking about what it means to actually follow Jesus and actually walking in the ways that he set out for us. And at the same time as that, I was really struggling with my mental health and just found myself kind of in the pits. And so it kind of created this perfect storm. One Sunday, I walked into church, and we were going through a sermon series on mental health. And Ben gave a sermon about Sabbath and how that can play a part in our mental health and how that is a gift from God concerning our mental health. And that sermon changed my life forever because I had just been learning about, I actually want to do the things Jesus did. And here I'm learning that Jesus, he practiced rest, and he practiced like retreating away from everyone to rest. And I'm also like desperate for anything that can kind of pick me out of this pit of depression. And so I began practicing Sabbath. I remember I went to Passion that New Year's Eve, and I was driving back to Tallahassee after Passion with a friend, and we were like, we're going to do this together. And it was a rocky start. At first, it was a lot of trial and error. As most college students, I didn't have like a super consistent schedule. And so that kind of made it hard to be like, when do I do this? And my friends live this way, so how do I like start to do it this way? And so it took some level of sacrifice of saying no to things so that I could say yes to Sabbath. But it, completely changed my life. And as my life has kind of taken on new chapters, going from college to then doing online seminary and working part-time and now working full-time, it's had to look different. But it's been something that I'm like, I kind of like Nolan was saying, like, I don't ever want to go back from this. It is the main way that I have tasted and seen that the Lord is good. And so I'm like, whatever it takes, I'm committed to doing this, no matter what it has to look like. Because it's such a gift to my life.
Yeah, I love it. I think what I love about each of you guys is, I would venture to say, in some way, shape, or form, your Sabbath looks a little bit different, but it's the same. But it there's different tones to it with seasons of life and what's going on and all those things. So, Grace, what does it look like now, and what did it look like maybe when you were first starting and all that?
Yes. So now, working at a church, my days off are Friday and Saturday. And so my Sabbath is Friday at sundown to Saturday at sundown. But a huge, important piece of my Sabbath now, and even while I was still in college, actually starts on Friday morning, Friday afternoon, the day before my Sabbath. One of the things that Ben talked about in that initial 2019 sermon was the day of preparation, where the Jewish people still to this day, they prepare themselves to actually rest well. And so I take Friday to get all the things that I need to get done, anything that could be like an open loop in my brain on Saturday. I go grocery shopping, I clean my house, I journal about the hard things of my week. I respond to emails, respond to texts. While I was in college, I did all my homework. I locked myself in a cave on Fridays and I did all my homework.
That's awesome.
So that it would be out of the way. And I really just try to check off anything that could be left on a mental to-do list going into my Sabbath.
Sure.
And then, Friday night, my Sabbath starts. And kind of like what you talked about on Sunday, William, I start with stopping. I know that I am going all week. And an object in motion tends to stay in motion. So I have to force myself, apply some force to actually stop. And so I just do everything very slowly. I cook a slow meal, and a huge part of my Sabbath is I turn my phone on Sabbath mode. You can customize do not disturb settings, and I have a Sabbath mode that turns on every Friday at 7 p.m.
That's great.
And it blocks most of my apps, and I can't see notifications, and I can't see a lot of my text conversations.
Yeah.
That's a really hard part.
You don't have the little brick thing? Not yet?
No, I don't have the brick. But this works for now.
Yeah.
And that is a huge part of stopping.
Sure.
And that's one of the more difficult parts of Sabbath for me, is saying I'm not responding to anyone's text or anyone's calls for 24 hours. Yeah. And that's a huge part of my work throughout the week. But every week it's a reminder that I am not God and I am not anyone's savior. And I don't have to be, because God is going to take care of them even if I can't. And I have anxieties rise up that are like, what if someone's in crisis and they need me? But Sabbath has taught me, like, I am not so important that I keep anyone's world spinning. Like, they can do without me.
Sure.
Because God is holding them in his hands. And so, that's kind of how I begin on Friday night. Saturday, I wake up with no alarm, and it's awesome. And I kind of begin my Saturday of Sabbath by making my coffee. That's like my first ritual of the day. And
the good coffee,
the good
not
coffee,
like the weekday coffee.
Yes.
If you don't have weekend Sabbath coffee, you're missing out.
Yes, no, actually, during the week I use an espresso. I hit a button and I get coffee in 20 seconds. On Saturday, I use a stovetop coffee maker called a mocha pot. One, because it's delicious,
Let's go.
And two, because it is a process. It takes like 10 minutes for this coffee to brew. And it, again, is something that like forces me to stop and to slow down. Like, I don't want the instant gratification.
All right, so to be clear, you're never drinking bad coffee.
I'm never drinking bad coffee. No.
I am. I'm drinking bad. I drink Kirkland's during the week, but when it's the weekend, I got the good stuff.
I'm just drinking better coffee on the weekends.
Kirkland's Signature, my bad. Kirkland's
Signature, yes,
That signature is important.
It is. Yeah. But that kind of kicks off my morning, and then I spend time in the Word and in prayer, and just having no agenda for my time in the Word. Especially, it's easy for me to slip into kind of like study mode, where I'm like, I'm reading scripture and I'm studying it, and I'm reading it as if I'm gonna teach it or lead a group through it. But on Sabbath, it's really important for me to just be with God and to not be a busy bee who's trying to intake as much as I can, but to just be with him. And so I have no agenda for that time. I just read and meditate and allow the Holy Spirit to bring things to my mind and focus on those. And then I usually take a prayer walk around my neighborhood. And a big thing for me during that prayer time, sounds bad, but I don't really do interceding for anyone on my Sabbath, because that is something I do a lot throughout my week. And that is kind of a form of emotional rest, of saying, like, I don't have to spend all my time coming to the Lord on others' behalves, because I trust that Jesus and the Holy Spirit are interceding on their behalf when I'm resting from that. And so I just talk to God about whatever comes to mind. And it's usually kind of light and like fun things. This is kind of my like fun time with the Lord, where it's like, this is my friend, not just like, he's not my boss, and he's not someone that I'm like reporting to today. This is my friend that I'm taking a walk with around my neighborhood. And so let's talk about just light conversation. And then I'm like, okay, God, what do you want us to do today? And the rest of my day, I never plan it out. I just kind of see where the day takes me. It's usually something out in nature because I know that feels restful to me. Mm-hmm. And the afternoon portion of my Saturday is always spent alone because I know, again, I've learned that is what's restful for me. I'm an introvert who needs alone time to recharge and to rest. And most of my work is spent with people. Yeah. And so I spend it alone. And it's usually out in nature, the beach or a park or my backyard or, wherever it is that I can just delight in what the Lord has made and how he's made me to love those things. Yeah. And I'll spend time, just like sitting and being. Yeah. I like to write, and so I write on my Sabbath. I'll sometimes have a book that's like reserved for Sabbath. I don't read it during the weekend. It's just my Sabbath. Or during the week, it's just my Sabbath book. Sometimes I'll sit at a coffee shop, but not South Adams Lucky Goat because that's my workplace.
Yeah, let's say you're at coffee shops a lot.
Yeah. I have specific coffee shops that are my Sabbath coffee shops, and so I don't get into work mode as soon as I walk into them.
It's going to be like Where's Waldo, but like Grace Markwell Sabbath edition.
Do not come find me. Don't come looking. And then kind of the last huge piece is worship. And so I spend time, with God in the morning and all throughout the afternoon. It feels like we're just hanging out all day. But a special piece of my Sabbath that I've grown to love is I have this really, really, really long worship playlist. It's like 60 hours long. And it's just like every worship song ever that I've ever known. And on my Sabbath, it goes on shuffle, and I do not skip any songs. I just worship to whatever comes on. And that is just like kind of a way that I teach myself and remind myself on my Sabbath that worship is not based on my preference and that God is worthy of all worship. And it's really a way to kind of work out like the spiritual consumerism in me of like, I want what I want and I want it now. Yeah. I'm like, I'll worship to this 2008 worship song and it will be great because it's me and Jesus right now. And it's not about what my preferences are. And so, then I end the day. I usually end my day with another kind of slow, delicious dinner, and I take time prepping that, and that's kind of the close of my Sabbath. And then I usually spend Saturday night with my friends. I make sure I have plans then to kind of re-enter the world that kept spinning, even when it felt like I took myself out of it. And that's also a beautiful thing to be like, I am now filled up and I'm going back as a much like better version of myself because I've rested with the Lord.
It's great. Thank you for sharing. I think when we talk about work, I think what you're hitting on, the day of preparation, like work is also, it's not just our job. Mm-hmm. It's like also our just life responsibilities, right? The laundry, the yard, the dishes, like it's all that other stuff too. So I was thinking about that yesterday afternoon. I mean, it's not just, don't just go into your office 6 days a week.
Right.
So opposite end, Nate, you probably bail on the whole family. You probably are by yourself all day, and Amanda loves it, right?
Never.
What is that rhythm of Sabbath look like for you and your family?
So we began on Friday nights. We had a couple times we tried to do it, depends on if the clouds are out or not, where the kids find the first 3 stars in the sky, and that's when the Sabbath can begin. And but Amanda would start mainly in the morning setting bread out to rise, and then we would bake fresh bread for our dinner. Clean the house, similar to what Grace was mentioning. One of the things that's probably the hardest for us with kids is you can't sit around and just rest all the time and then want a Sabbath. So clean the house. Get the work done. Let's get this done so we can actually rest. My wife will not rest unless the house is clean, and so it puts it into that perspective of if we want everyone to be able to enjoy the Sabbath, we all need to pitch in and get this done. So we have moved it recently to Saturdays. Yeah. Mainly just for the purposes of not having soccer and things like that
so
are
you added
going
youth
on.
Sports and that kid.
Yeah,
stuff,
kids have games and things like that, and sometimes, on Fridays it's hard to get the family to help clean the house if they're in school all day. So things like that kind of get in the mix of it. Honestly, listening to Grace talk makes me wonder what it would have been like if I didn't wait until my 40s to start Sabbathing. So it's like, wow, I could probably have less gray hair by now. But, the meal is always fun. We do this thing where we don't...
explain a little bit about the meal for people that don't understand, because you guys are following more of the traditional Sabbath.
So, you got a few things that you got set up at the table. We have
in a condensed version.
Right. We have 2 3-hour candles, right? One represents creation. The other one represents salvation, sanctification. And so, when you're eating your meal with the light that's, there for you, being provided, where Jesus is the light in the darkness. And my wife says a blessing over the candles. So you let the candles burn all the way out. You don't blow them out, right? Because you don't want to get rid of the blessing. Right? You don't want to extinguish it too early. But part of the prayer is, I forget exactly how she says it, but it's, may the light that shines here drive away fear and anxiety and stress and those types of things, it's a beautiful thing when you hear your wife pray it.
Yeah.
And then we have a cup of grape juice. We have bread. We break the bread and pass around the juice, and we have a prayer. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who provides fruit from the vine, provides bread from the earth, those types of things, which is kind of fun, recognizing God as the creator of the universe and all those things. And then I say a blessing over the kids.
Awesome.
So go over and put my hand on their head, say a blessing over them, and then go to my wife, and I pretty much Proverbs 31, reading quite a bit of that over her.
Yeah.
And pretty much starting off with an excellent wife who can find, and then finishing it pretty much with, she doesn't eat from the bread of idleness, and a woman who fears the Lord shall be praised, and so it's kind of fun. We've watched the girls sometimes writing that on cards to her, right?
That's awesome.
Where we rise up and bless you, kind of a thing. Very which is cool. Funny.
Yeah.
And then we wash our hands. There's like a little bowl with warm water in it, praising God for teaching us about sanctification and purification and the washing of hands. And then it's about the gist of it. We eat.
Yeah.
Right. And then we have a
specific meal, or just kind of
whatever.
Yeah.
Well, that was so we don't use knives.
Okay.
You actually cover your knife with a napkin, because a knife could be used for war or for work. And so there's no war or work on the Sabbath. So we cover our knives, which makes dinner sometimes fun.
Yeah.
Right? We let us be Neanderthals if we decided to have steak that night. Everybody just stick a fork in there and chew it off of the,
my kids do that anyway.
Yeah.
Use your fork.
Yeah. But it's one of, get rid of the manners, forget it today.
Yeah.
But we try to be sensitive to that, obviously, with some of our meals. And then we pray a blessing after the meal, when the meal's over. But then we play board games, stuff like that. We've had times where we've watched episodes of The Chosen together, stuff like that. And just kind of the night sets a tone of relaxation and family time. And so we welcomed God there. He's obviously there. The elements that are at the table point to him.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest fear my wife had was that this was going to become a checklist. Like, that was her whole thing. Don't let this become a checklist. This has to be something that we are intentionally seeking God for. And it's become that. And it's great.
That's awesome.
So that was kind of the biggest deal for us.
Yeah.
The next day, and I think that's what made the Sabbath easy to do, was starting it at night for us. Just because the next day, now you're already started your relaxation, and then it's over by the end of dinner that night. But, the next day, well, now we're coming to church. You know what I mean? We obviously, on Sunday, we're entering in to this mode of meeting Jesus. And on Saturdays, it was fun to do as well. But you try to get out, walk places, go places. If our daughters have soccer or something like that, we're going.
Yeah.
We're going to watch. We're going to have fun. We're going to cheer.
Yeah.
But also, recognizing that God wants his kids at play sometimes,
Yeah.
And so for our kids, a lot of times that's their chance to see what talents and gifts that God's given them and be able to use them for his glory, not in a working way like they're in school or being asked to do something, but just having fun.
Sure.
And so that's kind of been our Sabbath. That's where we're at.
I love it. That's great. Nolan, what about you, man? What about you? What's that look like?
Yeah, so before I jump into what it looks like, just I started Sabbathing. When I started Sabbathing, I would Sabbath like a Westerner. So I would start in the morning and go to the next morning.
Okay.
But I'll talk about this more later, but I discovered that was just a way for me to maintain control of how I worked. And it turned into this thing where I would work until midnight, and then I would not sleep well, and then I would not rest well. And so I switched to starting at the evening too, not because not because I'm super traditional or anything about it, but because I have unhealthy work habits outside of Sabbath, and so I let Sabbath teach me to start in the evening, to begin resting closer at the end of my day instead of at the beginning of Sunday. Yeah. So I start Saturday night. Usually my wife will start Saturday night with me. She gets home at around 7:30 ish from work, and so we'll start around then. We light a couple candles to just mark the difference between what came before and what God has for us now.
Yeah.
And then we'll hang out and talk, have a nice meal. I love cooking, so I usually cook something fairly nice. And we'll either watch a movie or talk. Or big thing recently is been making this beginning of our Sabbath a community thing to invite others to see how we begin Sabbath.
That's great.
Especially because most people we know don't Sabbath, and so we want them to kind of see the joy that it can be to start this rest and to delight in the ending of a day where God is being given everything and saying, I'm not doing what I was doing before. I'm going to be with you now. And so we invite. It's an open invitation. So if you're listening to this and you think that sounds cool, don't just come. You need to let me know. But you are welcome. To a limit. We can't house like 30 people. But our son's asleep. Our son is just over a year old. He's asleep at this point. So we do have an alarm. It's called our child, or our cats. And so we wake up, usually around 7:30. And the first thing we do is we all get ready and we head straight over to church. And we worship. So we begin kind of the first meaningful, wakeful hours of our Sabbath with the community of Christ, worshiping together. After that, it's luck of the draw. We just do whatever sounded good that day. We do our utmost to not do any kind of economic exchange. So we don't purchase. We don't think about purchasing. We don't think about the work we have coming up. We don't think about Nate's daycare situation, which is tragic right now. We don't think about that stuff. We try not to. Obviously, if it's something that's going to affect the welfare of our child, then that is something we do. We don't.
Sure.
We'll wash whatever it is of his that needs washing. If it's yesterday he has having some. He's constipated, so I had to run to Publix to get something to try and help with that. You're
not being legalistic.
No. I mean, Sabbath. Sabbath was made for man, right? Not man for the Sabbath. We take that really seriously, that's it's really. I mean, it's really loose form. Our just general rules are: do not work, do nothing that's going to get you ahead. and don't make purchases unless you have to.
Yeah.
I'll typically read. I will set an alarm. I'll get up a little earlier than Nate because I want to have time to make a coffee and to maybe read a chapter of some kind of book where I'm learning from someone else about how to better follow Jesus or something like that. And then I'll go on a bike ride or something these days indoors because it's kind of cold. But yeah,
it's good, man. It's awesome. Yeah, thank you guys. I love it. I think, like I said, each one's a little bit. Each of the way you practice it is a little bit different, but the undertone's the same, right? The undertone is what that is like. So, I think the meat of it is, man, how have you looked different from this? How have you seen Jesus differently from entering into this practice? And yeah, I mean, even just looking back on your life of this is who I was before, and I can directly say because I started this is my life now. Nolan, get us started.
Yeah. So like I said just a little bit before, and as Will, you told on me on Sunday,
Gotcha.
With permission. I'm a workaholic, or I was a workaholic. I think I used the past tense there. I was a workaholic.
I think we all are, not all, a lot of us are than we realize.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a grad student. It's a particular personality that gets to grad school.
Yeah.
Not a different one, not a more important one, not a special one, just a different one.
Sure.
And that personality is super type A, will work themselves into the ground, will burn out. And I mean, the reason I decided to try Sabbathing is because I didn't think I was with God very well. And I wasn't with God, it turns out, because I was always too tired, too full of work, too full of worry for my future and for success to be with God. I wasn't slow enough. I wasn't relaxed enough or rested enough. And so Sabbath led me to realize that about myself.
Yeah.
And it led me to realize that about myself in this way where suddenly I understood. I said, man, this is affected. By the grace of God, I wasn't a dad yet. I don't think I would have made it if I were a dad and then tried to Sabbath. But I was like, man, I haven't been spending time with my wife like I should. I haven't been spending time with God like I should. Friends are a thing I have to cram into my schedule. And so I realized I needed this rest, and it was by resting that I realized my workaholism. It was by resting that I realized I had unhealthy work habits. And when I changed all of that, I found that I had a desire to not only have this block of day, right, where I'm with God, but I desired also to have blocks of my days where I'm with God. And this has to be said, and this has got to be something that's an undercurrent in this whole sermon series, is that you can't pick a rhythm without picking another one. Because Sabbath is not like this beautiful, blissful thing if you haven't been around God before that day. And if you're not around God after that day.
Yeah.
And so by Sabbathing, it was the first rhythm I adopted in a really serious way, other than prayer. But by Sabbathing, I learned how to be silently with God, to enjoy his presence at the beginning of my day. And I learned how to be joyfully with my wife at the end of my day. And through both of those things, through learning to rest and learning to have margins and blocks of time with God throughout my day, not just on one day a week, I was able to be silent and with God enough to learn another thing about myself. And is that I had a lot of anger in me. And this was about a year ago, where God approached me in the morning, just being silent before him, and he approached me in the morning and he said, hey, so you have a lot of anger. And that's not really that's not the problem. The problem is that you're quick to it. You like to access that anger.
You're like, God, it's the morning.
Yeah. And he's
we're really getting into this right now. Huh?
He's like, well, if you came to me in the afternoon, I'd tell you then. But since you're hanging out with me mostly in the morning, I'm telling you no. And I resolved, and Lent is just this time where I end up making a lot of progress with God these days.
Yeah.
Because the Lent after I learned a Sabbath is the Lent after I learned to dwell on being a peacemaker and what being a peacemaker meant. And I don't think without an initial habit of rest, of stopping, of being before God in a joyful way, in a way that includes just kind of worshiping, I wouldn't have learned to be before God in a way that listens for him to teach you about yourself and to show you a better way. And over Lent, the following Lent, all I dwelt on was being a peacemaker for hours and hours and hours. And at some point during that time period, God reached inside of me and he took a good deal of that anger out.
Yeah.
It's not gone. But I mean, you can ask Kinsey. It's a different experience being married to me now. It's not sad to say, not a perfect experience. You know? I still have a lot to learn being a husband, but and I still have to rely on God to teach me new ways to be endlessly patient, even as he's endlessly patient. And to realize when my needing to be patient is actually because I'm bad and not because someone else is. But yeah, he made this big change in my life. And I don't think I would have learned it without Sabbath.
Yeah, it's incredible. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
It's powerful. Nate, Grace. We'll go Grace.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have learned so much, and I'll say it till I'm dead, but Sabbath has changed my life and changed my relationship with the Lord. And my relationships with other people as well. But I think the biggest thing that Sabbath has taught me and continues to teach me every week is that I, unfortunately, try to find so much of my value and my identity and my worth in how useful I can be to God. And that is really hard, especially in my job where I am working at a church. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm the person that people are calling when they have questions about God and when they need to like feel the love of God. And that's awesome. Like, dream job. It's the best thing ever. But it has like done work in my brain of being like, oh, God loves me because I'm useful to his kingdom in this way. And if I had never taken a Sabbath, if I didn't take a Sabbath even now, I would never know that about myself, because it took Sabbath and actually stopping for those anxieties and those insecurities to rise up, to be like, oh my gosh, I'm not answering any texts today. No one's needing me for their own relationship with God. So now I'm feeling anxious because
not even realizing that anxiety is even there.
Right. I had to actually stop to like let that anxiety rise up. Otherwise I would just go and feed that lie that I was believing. Yeah. And so it was through Sabbath of being like, okay, I'm doing nothing for God today, and I'm doing nothing really even for others today. And I have to first acknowledge that that's a problem. But then it was through Sabbath that I learned the truth, which is that Jesus cares much more to just be with me than he does to send me out to do his work. And there's a verse when Jesus is calling his disciples that has become like so meaningful to me, because he says he called the 12 to be with him and then to go do his work. And that has become kind of the theme of my Sabbath, is that first and foremost, Jesus just wants to be with me. And I've learned that he loves me and values me just as much on the days when I do nothing as he does on the days that are full to the brim with ministry. When I'm meeting with 5 girls in one day, his love for me is not greater on that day than it is on the day when I'm doing nothing. Yeah. And I would not have known that if it weren't for Sabbath. And the other huge thing that has kind of transformed me is Sabbath has taught me to love like my inner secret life with God more than I love the mountaintop spiritual high moments. And those are great moments. Like, I love seeing thousands of people in a room together worshiping God, or crazy miracles happening. Like, those are amazing things. But through Sabbath, I've come to value my like secret place and my inner quiet life with God even more than I value those things. And I wouldn't have. Like, I probably would have spent my whole life chasing those mountaintop moments and those mountaintop experiences if I had never tasted the goodness of Sabbath and the slow pace of Jesus at Sabbath and the gentleness of Jesus and the quietness of Jesus that I experienced during Sabbath. And yeah, those are just a couple of ways I really do think that Sabbath has touched every part of my life and has made me more like Jesus than probably anything else in my life. It's transformed me from the inside out, truly.
It's great. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Nate, what about you, man?
Sabbath has shown me that I'm in love. I am in love with who God is, what he's given me, what he's shown me through his scriptures. I'm in love with my wife and watching her serve alongside of me. In love with my kids, watching them, their hearts being shaped by the truth of who Jesus is.
Yeah.
Just makes you fall in love with everything. So last night is when we broke Sabbath, and after we have our meal, right, we have this plate, this cup, and a different type of candle, and a jar of fragrance, and we pour wine into the cup until it overflows onto the plate. We light the candles, mentioning again who Jesus is, light of the world, how he will overflow our cups with life. And then you actually use the wine that's on the plate, what was overflowed, to put out the candle. And our oldest child lights the candles. Our middle child holds the candle and then extinguishes it. And we go through the idea that the light of the world came into the earth and was extinguished. And then the youngest has a little jar of spices, and we pass it around and smell it, remembering that he was buried, and that, with the custom of, putting the spices on his body and everything. But it's just this, as we're closing out the Sabbath, we're remembering the sacrifice that Jesus paid for us. And watching our kids be a part of that, knowing that we've spent the day doing everything we can to know who he is and spend time with him, and then as a family finishing it together, you fall in love.
Yep. That's great. It's good, man. I think too, an encouragement for those of us with kids and is to get them involved, at any age, at any point, right? And even if it's a battle, it's where they're picking up on that stuff. They're learning, even as a teenager, they're kind of like, okay, rolling their eyes, doing the things, right? It's impactful, and it's...
Well, one thing, like Nolan mentioned, as they've invited people into their home.
Yeah.
So many of these, I would say, events that the Jewish people experienced happened at the temples or happened as a community, and then they took it back into their homes. But Sabbath is one that starts in the home and makes its way to the community. So I love how he's opening his home up to people that are out there, because Sabbath was in the house. Like this starts at the home, and then it makes its way out, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I love it. Any closing thoughts?
I would say just one thing, especially for my college students listening, is like we have all tasted the goodness of Sabbath, and so it has transformed into this thing that's like, yes, I'm going to do this every week, and it's going to be 24 hours. But if you're like, that sounds impossible for me, do not wait until that feels attainable. Start where you are, as you are. God is not asking for all or nothing. He is inviting you into life with him in this way, even if it looks different than what we've explained or what you've heard other people explain. If it's half a day or a few hours, start there. And let him prove himself to you, and it's going to grow from there. But you don't have to have this all or nothing mindset. It's a gift wherever you are, however you can have it. Just don't wait to accept that gift.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's one is the motto is start small or start where you're at. Don't make an aspirational rhythm for your life. Just do what you can. But I have a challenge personality. It was much worse when I was angrier. So I want to take what Grace says, second it, but also say, when I started Sabbath, it was painful. It was terrible. I didn't enjoy it for the first month, and I had active stress about it. It was bad, and I'm pretty sure I didn't meet some deadlines because of it. So while saying yes and amen to Grace, I want to say also, stretch. Mm-hmm. It's okay if it stretches you. It's okay if it hurts. It's okay if you don't like it. Be honest about all of that, and also take it to God. Mm-hmm. But then trust His story. Yeah. Trust the way that He's telling things, and it'll go well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and yeah, we're glad we got to do this and to hear from some other people. So you guys let us know if you like it. Maybe we'll do this more often. Thanks.